ECW original Axl Rotten. Axl, how are you doing tonight?
Gentlemen, a pleasure to be on the air with you tonight. I'm doing great, man. I just got in from, of all places, hanging out at the gym. Then from there I was actually reading some books. So I don't want to destroy that hardcore image, but I was taking some quality time reading books and surfing the internet. So that's what a chair-swinging, bloodthirsty freak does on a Wednesday night.
Oh, man, you're in it.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, we've had a lot of fans sending us questions. We've got some questions of our own, so if you don't mind, let's go ahead and get started.
Man, whatever you guys want to do. One thing people know about me is that, I'm not afraid to tell the truth and shoot and talk and even bury myself. So if someone's got a question, they want to know the truth, they want to know an answer. The one good thing about me, and I've always said this, I've never held back and I never will. I've got where I've gotten on my merit and not for kissing somebody's ass. So whatever, questions anyone has, feel free because I don't hold back. You want opinions, you want truths, you want facts, I'm your man. So, let's get into it, guys. I'm really looking forward to it.
All right. Of course, we got a couple of the random generic questions that we ask every guest, like growing up, were you a professional wrestling fan? If so, who'd you look up to?
Yeah, well, of course. For me, wrestling was my grandfather, or my mother's dad. My grandfather was a huge wrestling fan, and I was exposed to, the WWF back in like the early 70s when I was, when I was born in the early 70s. From the time I can recall, we would watch wrestling at 4 p.m. on Saturday afternoons. My grandfather's, it was sort of like a tradition. And, the guys that I grew up watching, were all, the guys. Well, Bruno was more toward the end of his career, the mid-'70s. He had a few runs here and there, but, his real heyday had come and gone. What I recall most from Bruno was his feud with Zbyszko in 1980, which was, still, in my opinion, one of the best programs ever in wrestling. But the guys that really inspired me, and I don't think it's hard to tell when you watch me work, is obviously Dusty Rhodes, is a huge inspiration, and was one of my personal favorites as a kid. And, and also it's no secret that, one of my other all-time favorites, of course, Superstar Billy Graham. And a lot of people have, if you watch some of the stuff that I do that's not the gory, crazy, bloody stuff, you realize, I do a lot of stuff that Dusty Rhodes does, and of course my interview, not tooting my own horn, but been praised by a lot of the guys in the business that I look up to, guys like Terry Funk and Shane Douglas and Raven and guys like that who have said, Axl Rotten is without a doubt one of the best promo guys in the business. Well, that's because I grew up watching guys like Dusty Rhodes, guys like Superstar Billy Graham, who didn't need someone to hand them a script, who didn't need someone to tell them what to say, because they were talented enough to generate their own type of heat, so to speak, and that's what really made me want to do this. Those guys, they were I thought incredible, and a guy like Dusty Rhodes was head and shoulders above a lot of other guys. And you looked at Dusty, he wasn't a bodybuilder like Billy Graham. Let's face it, if Billy Graham were 10, 15 years younger, he would have been Hulk Hogan. We all know this. You know what I mean? It's just, he was that guy. So, those are my two favorites.
Those are actually good people to look up to, and you're right when you say that, by watching is the best kind of people that have interview skills is because they've watched the guys in the past and kind of adapted.
Yeah, well, what are these kids today really going to do? I'm not, look, let me preface this by saying I'm not putting down, yes I am. I'm putting down the way that the guys are being brought into the business now. I was going to be politically correct, but I'm going to tell the truth. The fact remains that the next generation or the last two generations of professional wrestlers that are being brought into this business are not even being brought in as professional wrestlers. They're being brought in as WWE entertainers. They're not being taught how to work. They're not being taught. There's nothing about, like driving up and down the road, working the same guys, for 2-3 months in a row, doing a program. Well, I got the privilege of doing that where there's no territories for these guys. These guys all think professional wrestling is going to the gym, going tanning, getting your titties waxed, someone telling you what to say, and you going out there practicing your match all day, and then the TV cameras come on, and you guys do the best you can to have quote-unquote physicality without touching each other and no one chipping a tooth. That's what the next generation of pro wrestling is. And for the fans, it sucks because the fans are really getting cheated because guys like me, guys like Mick Foley, guys, go back to Sabu, Terry Funk, and I'm not just saying ECW guys, I'm talking about workhorses, guys like Bret Hart, Ric Flair. These guys were professional wrestlers. I mean, there was no family entertainment. You know, we were taught, you know, growing up to be, you know, a physical professional wrestler, not some kind of entertainer. You know, yeah, we were entertaining and we are entertaining, but we were wrestlers. These guys today, unfortunately, you know, who's going to teach them how to do an interview? I mean, yeah, you have some of the best guys in the back as agents, you know, that are very talented guys. But when you have like some college punk from Syracuse writing an interview for a guy like Ric Flair or Teddy Long or somebody who's been in this business 30 or 40 years, that's kind of not the way to go, in my opinion, you know.
I would agree with you. Now, one of our listeners wanted to know, how did you get the name Axl Rotten?
Well, yeah, it's you know, the misconception, of course, because of everyone that knows me personally knows I'm a huge music fan, so the first thing they go to is Axl Rose from Guns N' Roses, which wasn't the case. I'm going to tell you how the name came about because I love music. It's probably the most important thing in my life. I love, you know, everything about me is a song or a lyric. So the name Rotten came from Johnny Rotten from the Sex Pistols. That was easy for me. And if you watch my very, very early stuff, I used to be from England. I would have British flag on my tights and all that stuff. And the gimmick was, you know, just a punk rock dude from England. And I didn't want to use the name Johnny Rotten, but, you know, oddly enough, you know, there's like 6 degrees of separation here. Like Johnny Grunge from Public Enemy used to wrestle as Johnny Rotten before he was Johnny Grunge. But I got Axl. Funny, it's crazy enough. It came from, I was sitting, I worked at a video store when I was a kid, and I guess I was about 15 or 16 years old, and I was watching Beverly Hills Cop, and Bronson Pinchot kept doing the thing with Axl Foley, and he was going, Aquel, you know, and he kept saying Axl over and over, and I was like, huh, all right, screw it, Axl Rotten. And I thought when you put that together, it almost sounded like, you know, a rock star or something that you didn't need nothing else. I mean, with a name like Axl Rotten, you really don't need like the Bone Crusher Axl Rotten because it sounds cool. The name itself is cool. You know, Axl Rotten is a cool sounding name, so it was like, you know, oddly enough, it came from a combination of Eddie Murphy and Johnny Rotten. You know, that was where the name Axl Rotten came from. It had nothing to do with Axl Rose, which, you know, a lot of people always say, you know, Axl Rose. I'm like, no, it's really nothing to do with that. So that's the origin of where the name came from.
Man, some of the best names come from just, you know, little things that you see on TV. It's awesome.
Well, think about it, man. It's like, you know, let's face it. Some of the best things in the wrestling business happen completely by mistake. All right? I'm going to tell you a story about something that happened completely by mistake. You know, in ECW, you know, toward the end, about 98, when Al Snow came in, oddly enough, Al Snow's first opponent in ECW, Axl Rotten. Al Snow's last opponent in ECW, Axl Rotten. Anyway, just a bit of trivia. Al Snow with the whole head gimmick, that head gimmick was not a thought out, you know, hey, I'm going to start coming out to the ring with a head. What happened is, if you guys know, every night, you know, the fans would bring us all these weapons, you know, for the trash can that we would use for New Jack, you know, with myself and the Dudleys or whoever we were in the brawl with. And I think, you know, one night that mannequin head was brought for us to use as a weapon. And I think Al grabbed it out of the trash can and, you know, be it a couple seconds of just thought going, hey, wow, let me grab that head. Or that head would have just ended up being in the ring and New Jack probably would have hit Bubba in the head with it. So that's what happened. I mean, like, by coincidence, you know, that head became a big deal in ECW. I mean, only because by pure accident. And another one of the great stories of pure accident was no one expected Steve Austin to get over. I mean, that gimmick, the ringmaster, was like an 800-pound like weight around his neck, you know, and he started going out there doing his own promos, and lo and behold, you know, got over by mistake. So, you know, like I said, my name was just something that came to me by just like watching a movie, you know, and it stuck, you know, since, you know, I came up with it in 87, you know, when I was 16 years old, you know, and I've had it ever since. So, you know, and it's cool. I've never changed. I'm one of the few guys who've been lucky enough to be me my whole career. You know what I mean? My partner, Christ, Balls Mahoney, he's been a Buddha Singh, Balls Mahoney, Santa Claus, you know, you name it, you know, and I've throughout that whole time, I've still been Axl Rotten, so it's been pretty cool, you know.
Oh, yeah. I wish mine was that cool, man. I remember when I was first training and everything, and they told me to go home and think of a name and bring it to them, and they'd look at it and go yay or nay. I was picking through fucking PWI 500, just putting stuff together until I thought it was something sound cool.
and you know what I mean? It whatever works for you, bro. It's like, let's, you know, I my theory on the whole gimmick and the whole thing is like I'm not so much, you know, a gimmick as I am me just turned up a little bit, you know what I mean? Because you know, if you see me walking down the street sometimes, the chances of you seeing me in a pair of you know, cut off like denim shorts and a sleeveless shirt are pretty good. So that's what I wrestle in most of the time. So I mean, it's like, you know, it's not as if, you know, I put on some great big costume and become a different person. It's very much an extension of a real, you know, reality. But it also is, it's different for me in a lot of ways because, you know, so you don't want to become that guy too. You know, everyone's, hey, you know, I wasn't born Axl Rotten, so I got to remember that, you know, there's life outside of wrestling, and you know, a lot of times some guys can't separate that, and you know, and that becomes a problem too. But yeah, just, you know, sometimes the greatest things that ever happen are the greatest accidents, man. And you know, however you come with your name or however it works is just, you know, just some guys, it's like, you know, another funny story that the name Just Incredible. You know, one of the guys who in ECW was just one of the ring guys, you know, came up with that name for himself, you know, but it sort of really didn't fit him, you know what I mean? And PJ was given, you know, the name, you know, Just Incredible. The guy who came up with it later became, it was Wild Bill. He wrestled as Bilvis Wesley or something, but I'm talking about, that was when, like, ECW was like Titanic, you know, it was dying, you know, it was sinking. But, you know, that was, you know, something that he came up with. It was a real cool name, but you know, he never got the chance to use, and luckily, you know, for PJ, it worked out for him.
Now, Axl, we all know that you were trained by Jumpin' Joey Maggs. Do you have any memories of working with him before he passed?
Oh yeah, well, you know, the thing with Joey, I was actually trained by two guys, a guy named Jim Leon and Joey Maggs. They wrestled in the early 80s together down south. They had a tag team. They called themselves the Heavy Metal Connection. It was Bad Boy Ricky Lawless and Jumpin' Joey Maggs. They were the Heavy Metal Connection. They wrestled down south a lot. Joey and I are both from Baltimore, actually the same neighborhood. Literally grew up maybe 10 blocks from each other. And Joey was one of those guys that if you watched him, you know, he did all the things that everyone probably should have done that made it, you know, other than the fact that, you know, Joey was like, he was a little short, you know, but I mean, that didn't hurt him other than the fact that the period that he came along was, you know, the late 80s, you know, the mid to late 80s, Vince was pushing The Undertaker, Tugboat. I mean, these guys were all 6'7", 6'5", 400 pounds. What are you gonna do with a 5'9", 220 pound, you know, porky little Italian guy? You know, WCW already had the Italian Stallion, you know, and Joey was a good wrestler. There was absolutely nothing wrong with his work. You know, he was a good looking guy. He could go out there. The girls liked him. But, I mean, it just was, you know, he didn't do anything really special than any other 80s wrestler ever did. You know, had a nice mullet, a cute smile, and a nice pair of tights.